Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I am Gabriel Cardona and I'm joined as always by my co-host Connor Daly. What is up, Connor?
Avalanche is up, man. So much good stuff happening.
Yeah, it's been an absolutely crazy last couple of weeks. Connor was out last week because he's been so busy rocking some other initiatives that are happening. So we haven't actually talked in a couple of weeks. And since the last time we talked, I believe just so much new stuff is happening. It's been like this for a while, but it's definitely to the point where there is so much stuff happening in the ecosystem, it's impossible to keep your mind around it. But before I go there, I want to introduce our very special guest tonight. We have the core strategist at Snowball, Jomari Peterson. How's it going, Jomari?
It's well, enjoying life.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We're super grateful for your time. And I think I just want to pass the mic over to Connor and let him kind of drive the episode. So do your thing, Connor.
Yeah. So I'm super excited to have you on the show. So back in the day, back in like February or March or something like that.
Yeah, February going to March. Yeah.
Back in the day when it was like
back in the day,
5 months ago.
Pangolin had just launched and Avalanche was starting to see a lot more traffic than we were used to. Yeah. And one of the first people to reach out to me about figuring out like how Pangolin worked and like how to launch their own app on Avalanche was Jomari. And we had a conversation. We had a video call. You're like one of the first people I met in the Avalanche community outside of Ava Labs. I think maybe literally the first.
That's what's
up. So
I'm honored now.
I was super impressed at the time, and I didn't really know what you were working on. I didn't know, if it was going to be a thing or whatever. But it very quickly turned into. You told me that they had this pickle clone you were working on, and here we are now, 70 million TVL or whatever the number is today. Snowball Finance has taken over. It's my favorite compounder on Avalanche. And you guys have grown a ton. Yeah, I still use you guys for everything. Not financial advice.
Clearly not.
But yeah, no, I'm super excited. Yeah, well, welcome to the show.
No, glad to be here. I mean, I love everything about Avalanche. I always tell people, like when I heard that it was built upon a DAG, I was like, oh, I have to check it out because I've been into DAGs ever since I learned what the Phantom protocol was.
Oh man, so I've heard lots of people that are into blockchain. I've never heard of somebody that was into DAGs.
Oh, dude! I was following these two people from these two Israeli professors, the ones that I wrote the Ghost protocol initially, I believe, that Ethereum uses, and then I was always following the work that they were doing, and they was really into direct acyclic graphs. So I was like, oh, I know that's the future. So whatever's going to happen, I know it's going to be on DAGs. So let me keep an eye out on those.
Oh, that's so interesting. So yeah, so I wanted to start at tell us a little bit about your journey. I don't know that much about your personal history. How did you get into crypto? Obviously through DAGs and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I came into the cryptocurrency space in 2016. I was actually looking into voting and how do you do decentralized mobile web-based voting. Reached out to some various cryptographers, ended up talking to David Chong, and then he was mentioning about how he was trying to leverage kind of this randomized voting and polling thing, leveraging blockchain-related technologies. So that's oh, what is this? And they're like, okay, I've heard of Bitcoin via like the movie Dope and stuff, but I never dug into it because I didn't understand kind of what the value creating was and how it was kind of allowing people to come together and establish what they thought was valuable. And then when I dug into Ethereum and realized, oh, snaps, no, this is the kind of stuff I'm into. Like, I was like, okay, let me learn it. What are the risks? And I realized that on the long-term frame, quantum computing would actually be an issue for the signatures that we use, the elliptical key cryptography. So I was looking at what are the solutions for that. End up finding this guy named Peter Waterland, who was working on the quantum resistant ledger. Ended up joining him on that journey. So we ended up doing a small raise, about $4 million, and network about $100 million when I ended up leaving. Then from there, I really was into just crypto economic systems, into governance. So spent the next 4 years working on the digital reserve, which was supposed to be a proof of stake based micro lending system, where you kind of have this Federal Reserve type system, except for it lends directly to the individuals without collateral. Then really got into DAOs, touched on Aragon and their work, a little bit of NFTs. And then about in 2020, when the new DeFi boom was happening, I stumbled across Pickle, really loved their community, developed a couple strategies for them. And I was really getting into like how they function. And then at that time, I heard about Penguin doing an airdrop to sushi and uni holders. And I'm like, and I heard about it actually through the Black people in cryptocurrency group on Facebook. There was a lady on there saying, "Hey, don't miss out on your money." I was like, but we made it across, and I was like, "Oh, this is nice. This is nice. This is." I was like, and I'm trying to see what else was there. I was like, "Oh, wait, there's a lot of more room to grow." And I said, "Okay, this is a DAG." As I said, so this is actually they have the Ethereum virtual machine. So therefore, everything that already exists can be brought here and be optimized to be even better. And it's great. It's nice, and there's room to grow. So really, that's kind of was where I said, okay, I'm already doing Pickle. And I taught the Pickle community first, find out, are you planning on launching over here, or is anything going to happen? Because I didn't want to like to step on that they're already
Sure.
They was like, not right now. I was like, bet. And then I introduced to Abominable, Sasquatch, Big Wampa, and 8-Bit, and they were on board. And so we came over and launched. And I actually, you did see me talking to you originally, funny enough, but I actually stopped talking for the first, in the beginning of the launch, actually, because I recognize having a identity that is not known allows you to not have some biases. So we were able to grow under these three pseudo-anonymous other individuals. And then once we started to establish ourselves, then I was able to actually have more conversations and engage a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's the
damn, dude. That was
that's it.
Can I give you an award right now for like the best opening summary ever? That was epic, man.
Yeah.
There's so much there to dig into. My God, where do you even start? Where do you want to go, Connor?
Well, I was going to just talk about the identity thing of like, I think this is like a really interesting thing because crypto is all about the pseudonymous identities and people wanting to be anonymous. And I'm a person who, I guess, I understand the pros, but I also like a lot of people forget about the cons. And so, I'm a very, public out there. I use my real name for everything, unless I have some alts that nobody knows about. But, but it does allow you to like, there's definitely a lot of disadvantages to having your real name out there because especially if you're in crypto, people assume you have money. People can craft more targeted attacks at you and will try to phish and scam you in certain ways that, you don't otherwise have to see. And you have to worry about people kind of snooping through your personal finances and some stuff like that. That's very like unattractive. But it's also really hard to be anonymous. I think as a person who likes to talk about themselves, who likes to get like credit for their accomplishments, there's definitely advantages to using your real name. And especially if you ever want to transition back to working with like legacy companies or things like that, you say, well, I did a lot of cool stuff in crypto under this pseudonym.
It really does make you have a lot more respect for Satoshi's security ops game, doesn't it? Like all these years still no Satoshi. That's pretty good.
And that's the thing, it's an asymmetric problem. Like you can't mess up a single time. You have to be perfect always. And as somebody who used to work in like the professional cybersecurity world, that's like really tough.
Yes, no, for real. That's why I opted for just being silent.
So I don't know the story of your suit. I don't know the even story of this. Can you bring me up to speed? What happened? So you guys came out with not your real identities first. It sounds like you had three.
Oh no. The founders do not are unknown. There's Abominable Sasquatch. Mm-hmm. There is Big Wampa, and there's 8-Bit Giraffe. Mm-hmm. To this date, they're unknown. They're operating. And the thing that's important is like if you're doing that, it becomes much more important in designing a system that's robust and that is has a lot of transparency and clarity about what was happening. Because we are talking about code and permissions. So if you design things properly, have people looking at what's happening, you can make sure that you're mitigating the risks that people have about rug pulls and things of that nature by making sure that you present what was clear. So that's why really when we launched, I knew we was going to have to get to governance as quick as possible. So that was like really one of my big priorities. We actually ended up in our movement, we ended up not focusing as much on building out new products on some pieces because we want to make sure that we reach a point of governance where we put the work in the hands of our community and our users. Because Snowball, like we say, expanded DeFi on Avalanche, but really at its core, it's about the community members and using tools that they care about that help them in their journey on Avalanche. So that was really my initial priority. And that's how where we talk about these different phases. First, we launched with auto compounding, which was a need because people were on Pangolin, a lot of rewards were coming out. And the task of actually taking rewards, depositing them, put it back into a liquidity pair, that's time, that's effort, that's work, that's money. And we hadn't went into our apricot versions yet. So it was a little bit more expensive at the time. So kind of mitigating those costs by creating a smart contract that allows everybody to do it together helped. But we just had smart contracts when we launched. And then community members created our first interface, which was a text-based interface. It was just like text, the VFAT style, and it worked. It got the job.
Was it a web GUI or was it CLI? Like, how did you actually run it?
We didn't run it. A community member.
I mean, like, if I wanted to do it, did I do it from the command line, or was it a web GUI that just looked like
no, it was a web interface, but it was text-based.
Gotcha. So it was like straight up simple, just like
yes.
But it did what it needed to do.
Deposit, withdraw.
Amazing. Got it. Wow, that's good.
It was like ASCII art level stuff. Like I think there was like maybe an ASCII art snowball, and then just like it explained there. It drew out the pools, and then there was like 2 pages for like depositing and like staking. I think.
Oh, that's legendary. I hope somebody got a GIF of it somewhere that it survives for the historic purposes. That sounds epic.
Yeah, no, it's floating out there somewhere.
How big is your engineering squad?
We are now growing. For a long time, it was about 3 people. So now we have probably about 2 full-time smart contract related engineers, 2 back-end people, 2 front-end people.
How hard do you find it to be to on-ramp? I know it's hard to find Solidity engineers because they're so easy to be placed at another job. How hard do you find it to be to on-ramp a Web 2 person to a Web 3 position?
Well, so far, like all my experience in this space has been around ramping people up and getting the experience and what they're developing. Funny enough, I believe that Snowball has seeded a lot of the engineers that have went on to develop other things on the network as an introduction.
That's great.
So that's what we do. We are that space that allow people to test it out, to try out, and to engage with the live protocol, because people have more vested interest in learning because they have a direct connection to the value of what they make. So when they make a new user interface, it's because they didn't have one and it was useful and we needed one so more people could use it. So there was a direct connection. So people stretched themselves and then they grew, and then they grew like to other places for sure.
Yeah, no, that's one of the most impressive things that I think you've done is you've built this community that is like really welcoming and is able to take in new developers and help them get experience and empower them to a point where they feel capable of going off and doing their own things. And that's a really cool thing that we talk about all the time on this show. You know, if you're listening to this and you're just like, well, how do I get involved? I mean, I think our consistent messaging has been just like hop in a Discord, like find a project you like and just ask how I can help.
Yes.
Because there's so many opportunities, because on something like Pangolin, on something like Snowball, there is so much stuff to do and there is not nearly enough people to cover it. Like, you know, if you think about like websites like, Facebook, how many people do they have working on their core website? Probably like hundreds, right?
Yes.
Where all these DAO projects are like, if there's core contributors that are paid, I don't know, there's probably a handful, like maybe like 3.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you started out in this phase where you were very much kind of meeting the need of the community. You know, when you started, Pangolin was the only DApp on Avalanche. There was also Zero. but there was like a couple DEXes, nothing else. And so you saw the opportunity with the yield farming, bring over a compounder. You also did something that I have to like definitely give you applause for, which a lot of other people failed to do, is you saw what existed and what didn't exist yet, and you brought over something new. I think a lot of people in those first few months thinking of like, well, what project could I bring over? Well, there's DEXes. Let me just copy and paste this DEX. And instead of actually like reaching into the vast volume of like apps that people could bring over, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of copy and pasting of what was already here. But I think Snowball was legitimately, something new, something we didn't have. And I would say to builders out there who are looking, there's so much unexplored opportunity for new projects to bring in. Still, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And you don't necessarily have to develop something from scratch, but like I don't think Avalanche needs another DEX. And if you do want to bring another DEX to Avalanche, it better be something different.
Right.
Question: do you think that there is something about DEXes which lend themselves to being the hello world of smart contracts? Like, what is that phenomenon? Is it because you can raise money easy? Is it because there's a lot of code out there? All of the above? Why?
I think it's the money. I think it's the money.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
It's the money, and also it's a clear central point of the ecosystem for people. Mm-hmm. Like they know Uniswap, they know SushiSwap is at the core. Mm-hmm. But then all the other things that build into it, from the yearns to the pickles to the alpha Homoras and power pool, like all those things, like people use them and they're valid, but it's not that shining jewel that people hear about first. But no,
yeah.
Yes.
I was just saying, with all of the great tokenomics people can throw in, they think it's an easy way to just like, oh, we could do something that would get people like 100,000% yield APY or something like that, and then you get it on a compounder and it just looks really good, and then people will just start to use you because your numbers are high. Yes, there's a lot of token opportunities.
Yes, that is, and that was also, besides like engineering constraints, that was also the reason we were slower in enlisting some platforms. We were really focused on like sustainability. One difference is I do believe in like maximizing your yield. However, there's also this aspect of doing due diligence on who you connect with, and also making sure that your users can have a consistent confidence in what's being deployed via that platform, what tools are being applied where. Because there's different tools for different places, and if you don't have disclaimers and clarity about risks, then you really want to make sure that you kind of like you keep your elbows a little bit in before the ride, and then as you grow, you can spread out some because people start feeling more comfortable. But as we talk about like the transition and like identity change, one thing that I thought that was interesting that there's mixed sentiments about is a lot of other auto compounders start coming to the network. We had Yield come, we had Beefy come. Beefy had like a crazy low performance fee because they were coming from another network, so they really didn't need to absorb revenue from the network. And I saw that, okay, there's this increased competition in this area, and we are trying to provide our users not just value in compounding, but valuable tools in general. So as I said, okay, is this opportunity to really look at what else is missing in the space that'll be helpful? And that's kind of where the stable vaults came from, which was our second or third product, depending on which governance, if you consider governance product. And the stable vaults was really a fork of Saddle Finance, which was a Solidity-based version of StableSwap, which was similar to what Curve has. And we launched that because we saw that was a space still missing. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to start filling that and providing opportunities for like the stable, low slippage transactions. And that's really become a product that people have loved as well, that still need some additional love, but we was waiting for some additional pieces to drop, such as eventually Benkey and then other lending platforms that really bring the more additional utility to having stable coins and then piping them in and out of different areas. We also thought Stable Vault was actually going to be good because the fact that Avalanche is eventually going to become this hub of bridges. We really did believe that. So we looked at AnySwap bridge. We saw that TUSD with the trust token had direct minting. So that's a bridge of bringing funds in. Then we had at the time, the Avalanche Ethereum bridge. So it's like, how do you move across these places and kind of unify all these different assets? And our Stable Vault was meant to be that place. So that was kind of the vision that we saw for Stable Vault and why that was launched so early. Is because we were kind of marking the fact that we saw this vision, we want to provide that utility now. So as space continues to grow, we can grow with it. So that was an identity change that we had in our expansion as well.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. Yeah, total props for the foresight for all of that, because you're right. We also have Tether launching soon. We have USDT launching soon. We have USDC launching soon natively. And when you start thinking about this problem of like having multiple bridge tokens, I think it's actually maybe the hardest problem in crypto right now is the user interface problem of having all of these different bridge tokens, where if you want to hold the Tether token, there's the Avalanche native USDT, there's the Avalanche bridge USDT.E, then there's the old AB USDT, then there's also, Polygon bridged or any swapped bridge. And now you've got like 5 different versions of the same token. And so do we have to, when we're setting up these yield farm pools, how, like, do we just have to make 5 USDT tokens? It's like for 5 pools for each one. Like it's so confusing for users, and it's totally like an anti-pattern.
No, I mean, it is. I know I've been definitely advocating that people, like, if they're going to be moving to native tokens, that like, for example, USDT, it would have been great if they do it where they implement their own internal bridge for minting and redeeming, right? So it's like, okay, you're already using in USDT, which had that centralized component of redemption. So therefore, you might as well bridge between the different networks so that you can be native everywhere. So that was kind of always.
That's not a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe we should have done that. I'm going to talk to you next time before we make those decisions.
But yeah, no. But no, I'm really just loving the space. And for us as Snowball, it's really, as we've grown and the network has grown, is for us to be like, say, how do we move from being just this community affair to getting to an enterprise level, the decentralized project. So a lot of our work right now being led by Big Wampa is actually around how do we automate things? How do you take these multi-signature, these multi-sigs, and then start batching transactions so it's not 20 people or 5 people spending their entire day confirming every new addition or pool you want to have. How do you make sure that you have something that when there's a change on the network that you have background event listeners that then populate it and send it to you on Discord or wherever your workspace is, tell you, hey, are you ready? Just press this button and start that system, but it's still grounded inside of a system that everybody has to agree, everybody has to come to consensus. So I think that's where we're going right now for Snowball, is like, how do we move from the regular DAO sense to an enterprise product and systems?
Yeah, that was one thing we talked about a lot on our episode with Justin Trollope from Pangolin, is there's no like B2B world for DAOs. Like there's no like Cisco or like enterprise, like SAP or whatever for DAOs. Yeah. Like it's hard doing things like payroll and like timekeeping or like whatever you need to do. Like there's nobody has built out all of the software for you yet. So like any task that would be like trivial that you could just kind of like hire whatever software as a service tool for running your regular startup or regular enterprise, like isn't really compatible with the work that DAOs are doing. And so I do think there's actually a lot of opportunity for aspiring developers there to build tools for DAOs, like B2B for DAOs, basically. Yeah.
Yes, I concur. That's definitely where we're going for sure. So if you are interested in that, check out Snowball.
Yeah, can we dig in on DAOs a little bit? I want to approach it from the 10,000 foot perspective. So, DAOs, the power of DAOs, the future of organizations, like how impactful can this be? And like how great can DAOs scale out in terms of like having impact on our governance, or is it more going to be a corporation kind of thing? Like where do you, I know this is a 10,000 foot question, but I think you can probably expound on it. Sort of like, where do you see the power of DAOs in the future of organizations as somebody who works on the front lines of this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. First of all, I realized I didn't say what a DAO was. I try to always not use a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. It's meant to be an entity that is representative of some set of people or assets or individuals that are in control of what occurs. In regards to DAOs, for me, I think the first thing is you understand that there's different ways of aligning interests of people, right? So that's why there's a lot of different mechanisms for getting like consensus between individuals. The area that is interesting is you have the voting token thing right now, which is basically you either hold the token and that gives you a right to vote, or you stake the token and gives you a right to vote and engage, or in our case, you lock your token for some period of time, which gives you the right to vote. And these have different reasons of existing, but they're really about aligning the interests between the token holders and the actual protocol itself. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are embarking upon this new frontier in a way that isn't just technical, but is also about people. And sometimes I think we're missing the people component and the tools to help people draw consensus, right? So like right now we have people put out proposals, but the process of developing the proposal, identifying pros and cons, aren't really evident inside that proposal development process, right? So you post it and it's just what is. Like there's no pros and cons list, there's no what the debate was. And we're missing that process of helping people understand the choices that they're making. So we're having this delegated, for example, Penguin has the ability to delegate votes. But then the delegation of votes isn't followed by, are these people still voting in a way that matches my interest? And how do I know that? So that there's still these tools and this information and pipelines that we still have to develop out and work on that aren't just smart contract level. Some of it like is bots in Discord or inside of your forums that can summarize content and say, okay, this is what this is about, and this is what the argument is. And I think once we start doing that, we are going to embark upon this new frontier where governance, not just in this space changes, but governance period, because it's going to become a new demonstration of how people can engage in the areas that they care about, and then withdraw, be more passive on areas that they don't. Liquid democracy aspect is really dope when you think about it, because the government in the United States, for example, I don't know if I'm talking too much detail about this, by the way, I love governance, but in the United States, right, like we have the electoral college for our president, and then we vote for our two representatives and senators, and then we vote for our congresspeople, right? With delegated voting, our liquid staking, our liquid democracy, you now have this ability to say, hey, I like you for these subject matters. So I want you to vote on my behalf about this stuff. But you know what? I'm an expert on this stuff. So I'm going to vote for myself when it comes to these matters. Or I can delegate that vote to somebody else who I say, hey, I don't even know who I should vote to on that. So I'm going to give you that, and you can delegate to that whoever you think is necessary. So now I have this ability to be empowered as an individual to really withdraw and allocate my power as I desire. And that's what I'm excited about when it comes to governance. Like even Snowball's not there yet. Like we have what's called conviction voting right now, which is like long-term voting, because if you're stuck in somewhere, well, then you have interest in making sure that your funds are safe to at least the time when you exit, right? so you have more weight in the beginning. But if you actually add the delegated voting, that allows people to be able to vote on things they care about and sit back and let other systems work for them. So that's kind of the next iteration that we're not focused on right now, but where I see a lot more abilities coming from. But you need more ability to identify these topics and filter and then work through that. And that's not smart contracts. That's the human element of understanding how people work, such as machine learning, some natural language processing, things of that nature.
My eyes were lighting up during that whole speech. I had my mind blown several times there. I think the idea of doing kind of like topic selective delegation is very cool. And I think just overall, I think one of the coolest parts of this space is that we're kind of we're able to iterate on governance in a way that we have not been able to like before this. And like cryptocurrency itself is kind of like iterating on macroeconomics, like tons of experimentation in a way that like traditional currency has never been challenged by. And so we get to have all these experiments all the time. And now we're getting to a point where we can do the same thing for governance.
Yes.
And it's so cool.
I concur. No, that was one thing that was exciting to me. It was like, because you now have these elective economies, elective governance, like you can choose to participate in these systems and you can move in and out of them as necessary so you can find what works best for you. And we can also analyze on a larger scale what works. And
Yes.
that's amazing. Like it's really, that's why I became interested in this space, is because it moved us from a system of like, okay, I was born in this geopolitical location, and that dictates what I do and what my values are, to I can now subscribe to systems that match my interests and my values and create value within that system. And then,
that made me want to ask you further out on the question, does this scale out beyond corporations? Can this be a form of human governance? Are DAOs, or do we need a top-down kind of thing because of the way we're hardwired as humans? What do you think?
So here's the reality. You can always vote to empower individuals. Just because you're a DAO, that doesn't mean you can't empower an individual to do activities. Like I mean, I talk about developer dictatorships all the time, because we have a lot of like developers in space too that do developer dictatorships as they transition to more of a more robust governance. But what's interesting is when you think about it, like Caesar was coming from the Republic, and they would make Caesar like a dictator for a period of time during war times to handle stuff that they couldn't really handle together as a republic. And then the hope was that they would hand the powers back, right? But with DAOs, you can actually encode the system of handing the power back under some conditions. So now you can empower somebody for a period of time to do what you need them to do, and then take your power back.
Okay, so then on that note, so it seems like to some of us, we believe, and I'm not speaking for you guys, I'm saying my experience having been in the crypto ecosystem for a long time, it kind of seems like obviously crypto is going to win because it's a superior form of money. And if we're coming down to just raw capitalism and competition, crypto is going to eat non-crypto's lunch because the traditional systems are so clanky and the new system is so smooth and powerful that given enough time, clearly it's going to win. And I think one of the big wins of cryptocurrency has been that it made money a market with regards to competition and innovation. So where in the past you only had one option, your local government's currency, where today there's just this arms race of innovation around financial services, and it's ultimately benefiting everybody. So I'm wondering then, in the same way that we kind of presume crypto is going to win because it's superior, do we presume that DAOs are going to win because they're just superior to the organizational structure we've had for 10,000 generations, or no?
I think yes. I believe yes. The current iteration isn't it though. Like this current iteration isn't it. But what the story that and the narrative that is creating is going to be the thing that disrupts it. Because this problem we're resolving, right? We're resolving the digital identity. So you have various entities working towards that, from creating just a reputational based one to having like a set of different people validating who you are and attesting to identity. And then as those things firm up, then we're going to be in an ability to move it into other spheres. But because of the identity, the transition into real world identity, that's kind of the process we're iterating through. There's interesting solutions out there, but we're going to get there.
I can't hear you, man. Can you hear him, Jomari?
No.
I don't hear you, bro.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So this makes me think a lot about Estonian e-citizenship. And where basically you can just apply online and get Estonian citizenship, even if you don't necessarily live there. And so this, I've often thought about, like, it's so weird that like you can only vote for like congressmen or whatever, like where you live, because for most people, maybe not most people, for a lot of people, where you live doesn't really matter anymore because like our lives are all online anyway. So we kind of like, you know, we have these geographic communities that we live in, but there's also these like overlay communities that we live in. And especially in the United States, depending on where you live, most of the time your vote doesn't really matter. There's actually only like a few, like there's a joke of like the presidential election is this ritual we have every 4 years where people from Florida and Ohio decide who's going to be president. And so it's the kind of thing where like, if you're not actually in like a competitive area, like it doesn't really matter what you do. but like there's so many people who have like opinions and who would be like interested in participating in some of these things that I think, you know, people would love to participate in DAOs and like have voice in how their like online communities are driven. And so I guess what the real tipping point would be if some place like Estonia or someplace like Wyoming or these places that are trying to get on the cutting edge of kind of digital communities would then like issue a passport for a DAO membership or something like that, of like saying, you know, DAO members of this community could become citizens of Estonia, and your decisions that you make in this DAO would have some binding effect in the country or something like that, and to like start tying some of that together.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is going to happen, and it's going to cause an arms race of innovation around these countries that want to leapfrog mainstream countries like America. So the perfect example is in South America, where cryptocurrency just became legal currency, right? And it's been and it's been kind of a hard on-ramp, like the system hasn't been rolled out perfectly or whatever, and there's some people who are cynical about it, and you can see both sides of it. But either way about it, it just set off an arms race where other countries are now considering this. And I've often considered what you're describing, Connor. There are countries that could do something like what you're saying in an attempt to grab do a brain drain all around the world, get all the people to move there, like Wyoming or somewhere like that. Not Wyoming's not a country, I know that, but yeah, you understand what I'm saying. And then by offering these super innovative laws, it ultimately sort of forces the rest of the world to go along with it, just because of the nature of competition. If these people get a leg up on this technology and it ends up being as transformative as it could potentially be, then they're going to have such a leg up on the competition around the world that it makes every other country have to get in line. So I'm wondering, it's the same thing about, do you anticipate like, will this catch on like at a nation state level in the same way the cryptocurrency happened? So like, do we anticipate somewhere like Estonia doing like a DAO passport where you can ultimately like pay your taxes in ZK snarks and then vote on them with a DAO or something like total radical new thing that ultimately creates this new digital society and then draws everybody there? Or is that just sort of like too pie in the sky, right? Like how far can it really go?
I mean, from my perspective, you see that there's an interest in areas that are considered developing or are not the premier place to be, of trying to figure out ways to establish a brand for themselves, of being innovative, of changing the game, of being welcoming. I mean, you even see things like with the what's the name, Akon, with him, whatever he's doing with the Acorn thing, I whatever. But there's buy-in from people within the country that they're offering space and land, because they want to establish something that's innovative, that will be a draw for them in the future. And they want to leapfrog from wherever they are into whatever it can be. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we're going to find. It's areas that have the capacity to leapfrog, to change their entire system, because of they can take higher risks, basically. Areas that can take risks are going to do so. And if any of them pay off, then it's going to be a cascading effect. So everybody is in that position.
I think we're still a long way away from this happening. I think if you look at like the adoption cycle, it took 13 years for somebody to adopt Bitcoin as a national currency. It'll probably take another 13 years, like another 8 years.
But see, that's the thing. But that's not really a long time.
No.
I mean, it's funny because that's a long time to us now, especially in this space. 6 months is like eternity. But like, so,
I'm gonna be retired by then.
Right. That's the case. I mean, the people that was in 2013, a lot of them were like, "I'm good." So like 7 years and 8 years making a gigantic difference in the space. But when we think about the actual nation states, like America is even itself young, right? In the spectrum of people's countries. So we've now accelerating kind of what happens and what the format of policy is going to look like extremely rapidly. I mean, it's a new monetary policy that was created, and then now governance is going to be changed through the same type of decentralized entities. I think like 13 years, if we're saying that, that's crazy. Like, I mean, world beware in reality.
Yeah, no, seriously, that's like, 3 presidential elections from now, they'll be talking about crypto governance on the podium. Like that would be that's a pretty crazy timeline. I feel like, yeah, you're absolutely right. So I guess transitioning from governance, I guess where do you see Snowball today?
Yes.
And where do you think you're going in the future?
Yes. So, I mean, we actually hit on some of the stuff earlier. When we talked a little bit about the automation and those tools that we're building for ourselves, I believe those tools are going to be necessary for other people as well. So I think that's going to be a part of us expanding the DeFi and functionality on the network. It's like, how do you create these enterprise, this enterprise level backend to support the work that's happening?
Snowball as a service. Snowball as a service.
Something like that. So I think Big Wampa, Saito, and Jonas, I'm gonna shout the name of people who are actually working on this stuff, because that's not my skill set actually.
Nice play. That's gonna be big. Nice.
Yeah, they're the ones that are working and really fleshing out those pieces of work. I think that the stable vault work is going to be a key part for us, because not only for the like assets across the bridges, but for liquid staking. We actually passed a governance vote to have a spinoff venture for liquid staking, and that should be coming out in the next month, about month and a half.
Can you describe liquid staking?
Yes, liquid staking. Avalanche is a proof of stake, has proof of stake in it, where you stake Avax for some period of time, up to 2 years, I believe, or 1 year. I'm not sure how much I'm actually on top of my head, but you stake it, and then it's locked there. You can't touch it. It's capital that's working for you in validating or delegating to someone who's validating the network, right? But with liquid staking, essentially, you're creating this this receipt token, essentially, that represents what you deposited into the staking process, and maybe the rewards that are being earned. And then you can take that and then use that back inside of the ecosystem. So you're getting your 10% reward from staking, and now you can maybe get another 5% from lending it out, or providing it in some other asset. So now you're increasing like liquidity on the network, and also velocity of money. So
okay, beautiful, thank you. And then earlier you had mentioned, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but I was hoping you could unpack that a bit. You had mentioned you think Avalanche is ultimately going to be a platform of layer 1 bridges or something. I don't remember.
Yes, no, I mean, so basically, with Avalanches, speeds, subnets, and just general capabilities, it makes sense, and people wanted to have interoperability. It makes sense that people are going to be trying to connect to Avalanche over time. So if you're connected to Avalanche, you're going to be bringing assets over, and everybody has their native assets, but there's some assets that are bridged between the two. So it's either like, how do you ease that process for somebody? Do you make them have to go all the way route back to where they started from, or do you provide a direct bridge? People are going to just give them a direct bridge, but that will be, unless there's some unifying bridge asset or methodology, is going to have a different nomenclature or digital identity. So therefore, you're going to have redundancies of assets in the same place. And then the stable vault would be able to provide the ability to move between those places as an improved hub. So essentially, Avalanche can then become your bridging hub to minimize the jumps between networks. So every network doesn't have to connect to each other. Every network needs to connect with Avalanche. So
okay, I understand. Yeah, that's a great vision, by the way. Props. And I've been calling that the bridging, because I myself have been witnessing the same thing. If everybody's bridging up, wherever there's value, it's going to bridge. And Avalanche is just so smooth. It's a good hub for all the networks.
Right. Absolutely. So there's that. There's liquid staking. These are all things that branch out of having a stable vault, right? The derivative products. So, for example, BenKey creates the receipt tokens of Key DAI, Key USDC, Key USDT, right? And those are assets. Those are interest-bearing assets now. So having a stable vault where you can actually trade between interest-bearing assets and move between them as necessary becomes a potential use of the stable vault. I mean, and we're always going to do auto compounding, and I think yield optimization is really what I'm interested in. Have a conversation with some people to do cross-chain yield optimization. So basically, where Avalanche with its smoothness and yields can become the hub where people move funds over across a bridge, across smart contracts, using like maybe like the novelty smart contracts using the same nonce, so you can have the same smart contract address on both sides. You can move it over, and then you can actually deposit it into strategies on the other side. And then Avalanche can then become this headquarters for yield optimization. So that's something that we discuss a lot as well, and we have some conversations with executing on. So
wonderful vision, man. Wonderful vision. Like, you articulate it so cleanly and clearly. It's great. Nice job.
I try.
Yeah, no, it's seriously so impressive to see how far you've come from the text-based GUI to now you're on your third interface, and you've added so many new strategies. When BenKey launched, I think within like 24 hours, you guys had your new AVAX compounding strategy that was just so impressive. And now I'm just seeing all these new things pop up, all the stable vaults, all the governance, the token locking. Like, I mean, it's super impressive, and I'm super bullish on your future just because the pace of innovation you guys have is incredible. The community that you've been able to build is incredible. You're clearly bringing in some very, very competent people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like it's crazy because our governance voting system was written by Bimino, who's now at Pangolin, and then a lot of the more eclectic things we do, like our NFT marketplace, which is like we just have one. We actually have some of the rarest actually NFTs actually on the network because of Best Coder and this artist named Luis. Like, we have these rolling Sasquatches, and like there's like only like 5 of one of them and 10 of the other. So like they're real rare.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. So I did want to transition the conversation. There's another thing that I kind of wanted to ask you about while you were here. And I have to say, you're one of the few, probably the only Black person I know personally in crypto. And that sucks. Like, that's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to understand. Well, I guess one of my goals with this podcast is I don't want to just bring on the same people over and over. I want to try to highlight a diverse group of voices to hopefully uncover and highlight more women working in crypto, more people of color working in crypto, and do all that. So you're hopefully the first of many. But I kind of want to dig into like what your experience has been and really try to understand for myself, like what the obstacles you're seeing are and like what the Avalanche community could do better to be more welcoming. And if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, no, the Avalanche network has become a lot even more welcome than it was at first. When I first came on, it was funny because I bridged in, and then I didn't know I needed to bring AVAX for whatever reason. I just didn't know. So therefore, I didn't have any AVAX, and I was going around the Discord begging for people like, just send me an AVAX so I'll send it right back to you. Like, so that was kind of schemish, right? But and then eventually somebody helped me out, but that took some time. But since then, I think people have become a lot more receptive. It's become more of a community feeling. People are getting to know each other and the protocols and the difficulties people face. I know for me, kind of as somebody of color who has experienced bias, like when I was with QRL, for example, I experienced like the fact that because my face was evident, like people were making nigger coins, and like put them on my face on it and stuff like that. So crazy things do happen when your face is out there and you're first of color and you're on a project that people are interested in, which is one of the reasons. I was silent for a long time on network. I didn't want my presence to affect the quality of the product that we were creating. And as we continued to establish myself, I was able to start talking more and become more evident and engage with people, and then they can see the quality and the substance of my work. But I don't think that's anything about Avalanche. I think Avalanche as a whole is very receptive. It's really just individuals themselves. I mean, it took actually up until last week for me to get called a nigger for the first time. Like, I got called a nigger on Telegram recently, but that was the first time since I've been on the network. So I was actually like, this has been great. Like, first time, that's awesome. Like, so basically, it's just being cognizant. I believe margin swaps. Like he might be African, but I mean, it's the same African that the diaspora. He's actually one of the people on there is person of color, and then there's others. A lot of them I know are pseudo anonymous, but they're coming and they've been here. And then like, it's just been interesting, like finding that pathway and those networks where they fit in is really the issue. It's like, if you don't go to the same schools as some people have the same experiences, the bridge to learning about something and participating in that space becomes more difficult. Because, for example, even becoming cryptocurrency in itself took longer than it should have, given my interests. Because when I was a freshman in college, which was 2004, like I was trying to write a book about how our U.S. dollar is fiat and based on trust. And, so that's kind of thinking that directly would have been interested in Bitcoin and Ethereum, but the circles and the interactions that I had did not include people that would have that kind of discussion. So basically, what's happening is now the conversation is widening and people are coming in, and it's really just bridging that conversation, and it really created a culture among people that's welcoming and let them see that, okay, yeah, we're inclusive, we're going to talk about these things, and there's a space and a place for you. Yeah, but I think it's been great on the network. And I think, bringing people in, making sure that they see other faces is vital, because that lets them know that it's welcoming. Like, I'm a big proponent of getting women on myself, because there's a lot of women like building stuff, creating things, and they're just fantastic and much more pleasing to look at on screen. So at least for me. So therefore, I'm always encouraging to make sure that women are highlighted in the terrific stuff that they're building and creating, because it's often overlooked. Like the MetaMask, like phenomenal work by that team. I think it was MetaMask. I think MetaMask has a team, as well as is the MyEther wallet is also so both of the two major wallets like in the space are led by women. Then there's I think Stark Labs. Like so they're incredible people out there. It's just it's just having that circle in those interactions. Sorry, I'm glad.
I always like to remind people that the very first software engineer ever was Ada Lovelace. And so, it's just a reminder that going back to Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace and the difference engine and the analytical engine, the very first software engineer ever was a woman. So,
right. No, for sure. Like, I really enjoyed the movie also, Hidden Figures. If you haven't seen it, it's a good movie to watch. I'm a big movie guy, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's really crucial. And I think it's something that I guess we've been doing a lot of hiring at Ava Labs, and I think we've been able to hire a number of women in various roles, even like leadership roles. But I think we've really struggled on the engineering side. And when I look throughout the community, I see there's a lot of women in non-engineering crypto roles, and so I know there's actually just not a lot of women in engineering in general.
Yeah, no, it is a systemic issue. Like it's not on any individual entity or corporation. It's on the cultural thread throughout the system that's changed. And each party has to do their part. But when they are good, they're sought after. One of my friends, Whitney Griffith, she's like always sought after. Like she does software engineering. I think she was with Microsoft, and now she does it with other places around smart contract development. But they always she tell people, stop calling me, call somebody else.
Oh, well, that's really funny. Yeah, and I hope that, like I said, it's one of my goals. I want to make Avalanche an incredibly welcoming place. I also I want to cater to crypto beginners of all stripes, because I think there's a lot of people who have a lack of confidence, or they're coming to the space for the first time. And I kind of want to let them know that we're all just making it up as we go along. There's,
absolutely. Yeah, one thing Big Wamplik says, he's like, someone's grandma or grandpa should be able to come and use the service, and if they feel confident that things happen the way that they expected it to happen. Like that's the goal where we should be designing for. So we're making a big investment in UX and UI right now, because we believe we're not quite there yet. So.
And nobody's been doing this for 10 years, literally, especially for smart contract related stuff. Literally, you could only have ever been doing this for 5 or 6 years if you started day one. Absolutely. So if you feel like you're a beginner to this space, so is everybody else.
Everybody is. And that's the thing that's interesting, because the whole process of interacting with it is just a mental and psychological change from how we've been trained to interacting with digital assets, right? We're used to other people being in control of our stuff. But for me to now have my wallet on my browser or external, and then I have to give permission to everything, it's a disconnect. I said, yes, I'm empowered, but that's not how I'm used to interacting. That seems like an extra hurdle because people keep asking us like, why do I have to do approval every time I deposit something? It's like, well, some people do infinity approval so they can always access your funds. We just do an approval for how much you need to deposit. That way, anything else that you don't deposit isn't at risk. But it's like, oh, but I don't want to press approve every time I interact with your thing. So how do you resolve that? How do you create an interface where I said, okay, you can make a choice. We will never ask you this again, but be aware, like your funds are always accessible to us, or you can choose this side, and you can always adjust it. So how do you start communicating these things and building them into your experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I mentioned earlier the bridge problem is like the hardest problem in crypto. The other hardest problem in crypto is just the onboarding and just the making interfaces, like exactly like you say. I think about this the same way. Is this like, how could your grandmother do this? How could a homeless person use this? Like what are the, how can we reduce this so that you don't have to have any technical skill? Because if you have to have gone to college and have to be a blockchain developer for like 6 months to like understand how to use any of this stuff, like it's not going to work. Like it's not going to catch on. It will for some people, but it won't for everyone. And if we want this technology to be as revolutionary and as world changing as it could be, yeah, we have to get to a point where anybody can use it.
Yeah, the story of technology is the story of the human experience, and it's like we've had the same human condition for thousands of generations now. So the me that is me and the physical person that was my great grandpa, we're pretty much the same. We have the same hierarchy of needs. But what's the difference between our lives? The difference between our lives is the technology that's around while we're alive that allows us to have an impact on the world around us. And so it's sort of whenever taking like a personal computer, which is very, very, very complex, and being able to mask away and abstract away all the complexity to where you come up with an iPad. And it's so simple. You see kids that understand intuitively swiping and tapping. Bringing that same level of detail and smooth user experience to the blockchain is one of the greatest opportunities that exists in the world right now, because we have this absolutely wondrous machine, box of marvels, but we need to somehow make it so smooth that kids can swipe and tap. And so that's a big opportunity doing user experience in the blockchain right now.
Right. No, exactly. Like it needs to be so easy that mamas and daddies like saying, this is mama daddy allowance coins, easy. And I'm paying you for washing the dishes.
And I've noticed kids are more digitally native. Like I have a 12-year-old son, and he's of course much more digitally native than even myself. And I'm pretty digitally native, right? I grew up with computers around me. And so it's like also we have the benefit of people who are alive now just being more digitally native, and it'll be that way going forward as well. So the user experience will just be more intuitive to them because they were brought up around it. My son has known crypto for as long as he's been alive, right? So to him, there's not any whiz bang magic to it. It's just the way the stuff is,
Yeah,
that's dope.
All right, well that's awesome. All right, so thank you so much for joining us this week. This has been an awesome podcast. This is maybe my favorite episode so far. But I want to make sure.
Yeah, anytime you want to, if you have something you want to plug for your team, or if you just want to talk, man, you have an open-ended invitation. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh no, thank you, appreciate it. I will take you guys up on that.
Yeah. So do you have a Twitter handle? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, Twitter, Jomari, JOMARI_P. There's other Jomaris out there. Mostly in the Philippines. And then I'm Jomari on everything else typically. But Jomari_P. I think I'm Jomari P on Discord. Could come to Snowball channel. He hit me up.
Yeah, we'll plug the stuff in the description box below. We'll put your Twitter and your website and your Discord and everything.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, so I've been Connor Daly. Yeah, at Twitter I'm DAS_Connor, DAS_CONNOR.
Yeah, and I'm CG Cardona. Thank you so much. If you made it this far, you're a champion. I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you. Have a great week. And so, as we always say, from snowflake to avalanche and through consensus to the stars. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.